Alright, here I am attempting to make another video. I am in my partner's music studio that is full of synthesizers and other instruments. So if you want to see what normally happens in this room, you can search Amy, A-M-I-E, Waters on YouTube, and you will see all the videos that have been made in this room. She has made all sorts of really cool music for years, and you should check out her new album, which is on Spotify and Apple Music and all that shit, and it's called Cosmos of the Soul, and it's all about coming out. So it's right on brand for this. But today, I wanted to make a video about being an ally. And again, my voice is really hoarse because I've been doing 2 weeks of camp at the skate park. It's very loud there. It is dropping because of tea, but also it is very hoarse, and I'm struggling to get my voice back at all. So that's what's going on with my voice. And I'm just going to keep rolling with it. I can talk, and that's all I need. I just need to be able to talk enough that you can hear me. So a few weeks ago, I saw a tweet about being a good ally and asking people who would they vouch for. Like, who would you vouch for as 100% a good ally? And that, I've been thinking on this literally for weeks. What does that mean? And who would I vouch for 100%? And I really had a hard time. I really had a hard time thinking about that and what it means. And for a long time, I couldn't think of anyone. Couldn't think of anyone who I would say, yeah, 100%. They're like as good of an ally as you can be. I just kept thinking on it and thinking about it, and I started thinking about the past year. Today, I actually have a lot of stuff written down because I just have so much ground I want to cover in the next however many minutes. I was thinking about the last year plus. It's been almost 14 months since I started coming out, since I came out to myself and immediately started talking to other people about it. So I spent a good 14 months now talking to people and coming out, and I've had a lot of experiences with different types of responses and different types of allyship and bad allyship and straight out transphobia. So I was going to start with my worst experience, which happened on January 1st. I remember waking up on New Year's Day and going on Facebook to find that one of my cousins, I have a lot of cousins, so I don't really feel like it pegs one person if I say cousin, because I have like 20 cousins on both sides of my family, plus cousins on my partner's side of my family, so there's a lot of cousins out there. But one of my cousins had gone through my Facebook and found every single place where I had made a grammar or spelling mistake and had corrected every single one of them systematically for months going backwards. Had gone through months of my posts and corrected everything. And when I messaged this person and was like, hey, that's a really hurtful thing to do, the responses that they started sending me made it really clear that it wasn't really about grammar, that they were transphobic and they didn't believe that they, them pronouns were valid, that it didn't believe that my existence was valid or that my transness was real, I guess. That became really clear really fast in my interactions with them, and I just stopped interacting with them and I blocked them. And then somehow they had gotten access to my Facebook again. I can only assume through another extended family member, had screenshotted and sent them what I had posted about the interaction and how I found it really ableist and really transphobic. And then they started emailing me. They started emailing me hurtful things and emailing my mom hurtful things. And I didn't respond to any of it. And I was really, really hurt and really scared by this because I had not experienced that kind of blatant transphobia yet. I was only really out publicly since September, so it had only been a few months in the beginning of January. And in order to feel safe, I basically unfriended probably half of my friends on my personal Facebook. And then I shut down my Facebook for a month. I took a month break from Facebook and unfriended about half the people because I unfriended anyone who I wasn't 100% sure was a trans ally. I unfriended all my extended family because I didn't know who had taken those screenshots and sent them to her. So I decided I couldn't trust anyone in my extended family. I've had some people message me and be like, "Why aren't we friends anymore?" And that's why, is because I got rid of everyone who I didn't trust to a high degree, knowing that they were a good trans ally. So that was the worst experience, and now I want to go from that to the best experience that I've had. Eventually, thinking about all this and thinking about all the worst experiences, I started thinking about the best ally that I have in my life. The one person who came to mind which took weeks and weeks of thinking of, the one person who I was like, wow, yeah, this person I would vouch for 100%. And I want to tell you why. A lot of I guess the big reason why was that they understood both how complicated Mother's and Father's Day was for both me and my partner, and also understood that Father's Day was important to me as a parent, that I identified with it and I wanted to celebrate it, but also that my kid doesn't yet see me that way and how hard that is for me. And they were the only person who texted me on Father's Day and said, "Happy complicated Father's Day," essentially, and that I hope you're doing okay, and checked in with me when it was a really hard day for them personally, because they are on staff at our church and it was their last day. So it was the last day that she worked at our church, and I had seen her cry on the live stream of our church's our church's like online services that are happening right now multiple times. I knew it was a really hard day to say goodbye to a community that you've been serving for 2 years, to say goodbye to them. At least I think it's 2 years. I don't really know how many years it was. But on that day, they still took the time to acknowledge how hard the day was for me and acknowledge that it was important to me and that I wanted it acknowledged, because they've really taken the time to understand and listen to my identity and my thoughts and my struggles 100%. And they're the one person who I cannot think of a single time that they made me uncomfortable by misgendering me, by using the wrong pronouns. They correct other people. They constantly are using inclusive language all the time. So I have this one person who did this, and on that day it meant so much. And like I said, it was the last day at our church, and our church is part of the United Methodist churches, and the United Methodists have this, to me, stupid, just straight up, I'm just gonna say, I think it's a stupid, antiquated rule where when staff members leave and go to a new church, you're not supposed to talk to them for a year. You're not supposed to connect with them for a year. You're supposed to let them get acquainted with their new church and get into their new job without burdening them by talking to them. Which I understand where that comes from, and I understand that a lot of it is to cut down on gossip and to help them foster new relationships at their new job. But for me, all this rule is doing is literally taking away the one person I could think of in my personal life. My partner pointed out a few people we know in the internet and friends who we haven't seen in a really long time who would probably fall into 100% good ally category. But the one person who I actually see and talk to and spend time with, and yes, technically they're my pastor, and I don't know how to deal with this except to say that it's really fucking heartbreaking and really hard to lose this one person, and I just it's making church and wanting to stay at church really complicated. But that's not the point of this video. So I don't want to go too deep into that, except to say that I could only think of one person. So because of that, what I really wanted to talk about, and it took me 10 minutes to get to, is how to be a good ally. How do you get closer to being that person who I can vouch for and say 100% to another trans person? Another trans person asked me, who is the best ally? Who is someone you know will 100% back me and get it? I'm going to tell you a few steps to get a little bit closer to that. And before I do that, though, I do want to say that most of my friends in my life are good allies, if not great allies. But they all fuck up from time to time. And it's really hard when it's someone who's a good friend of mine who drops a she or dead names me in a conversation. That is hard, and it just makes me go, ugh, inside. It's just rough. And I do not have the confidence that I need to correct people and to weather that as good as I should, which is why I don't have a lot of people who I consider 100% allies. So, let's see. Number one, listen to and seek out queer and trans stories. And then do it more and keep doing it and make it a regular part of your life. The best ways to do this are to find queer and trans people of all different varieties. Find gay people, find lesbians, find trans men, find trans women, find black queer people, and follow them on social media, follow their YouTube channels, and hear their stories, watch documentaries, buy books. And if you're watching this video, you're already on your way. So great job. Keep going. Find more good trans videos. There's a lot of bad trans videos on YouTube, and it's hard for me to tell you how to parse what's good and what's bad. But once you do it a little while, you will figure it out, and you'll be able to spot pretty quickly, like, oh, this is good or bad. The number one thing that I would recommend is if someone is telling you who is not allowed to be trans or not allowed to be a woman or not allowed to be a lesbian, avoid that. We don't want people who are gatekeeping. That's gatekeeping, saying, you can't be this or that. If you're seeing that kind of behavior or that kind of video, just move on. There's better stuff out there. So don't be gatekeepy, and don't support gatekeepers. We want to let people use the labels that help them, and that's the point of labels. Okay, so number one, take in queer and trans media. Number two, don't assume people's pronouns or gender or titles. You have to learn those things, and you have to ask people. So when you see someone in a store, don't assume that because they look like a man that they identify as a man. They may or may not. Don't assume because someone has long hair that they use she, her pronouns. And this will help everybody in the whole world out, including cis people, because there are a lot of not trans people, which is cis people, who don't necessarily look like their gender. I get a lot of boys who come to my business, a lot of boys with long hair, and the other boys call them she, and they get really frustrated by that. And I have to teach the kids, like, hey, you need to ask. You need to find out if that person uses she or not, if that person is a girl or not. You need to find out what they like and not just assume. So don't assume someone's pronouns. You need to ask them. If it's someone who you're going to be interacting with a lot, just ask, like, and offer yours first. Hey, I'm AJ. I use they, them pronouns. What's your name? What pronouns do you use? That's it. Done. If you're not going to be interacting with them for more than a moment or two, then rule number 3 makes more sense than rule number 2. Say someone is coming to my business and buying something, and I don't know what gender they are, and I don't know what pronouns they use, then I just use inclusive language as best as I can. And I use pronouns like they, them. They, them are great to use until you have something else to use, until they say, oh, thanks, actually, it's he. Cool, then I'll use he. Another thing you can do is use words like everybody instead of ladies and gentlemen, or friend is a good one, or folks. There's a lot of inclusive language you can use, especially when it's in passing, and you don't necessarily need to super get to know someone because you're just selling them a bottle of soda or something. or you're buying a bottle of soda from them, or they're seating you at your table at a restaurant. Hopefully, you're not actually eating at restaurants right now because there's a pandemic and that's not safe no matter what they tell you. Don't eat at restaurants right now. Okay, so number three is gender inclusive language, which brings me back to my trans ally I talked about before, who taught me this wonderful word that I had always heard but I hadn't used, and it's y'all. Y'all is great. Y'all is wonderful because it's it's gender inclusive for everybody. It just means all of you people. Hey, and you can use it in so many contexts. And growing up in Chicago made me very resistant to y'all. I was straight up told things like, we don't use that. That's a Southern word, and we're from Chicago, and we use you guys. And it's fine. Guys is actually gender neutral. It's fine. Everybody's a guy. And you know what? I might feel that way, or my family might feel that way, but there's people who don't feel that way. There are people who do not want to be called guy. And that's fine, because you know what? We have y'all. And this wonderful person came into my life, and they had spent a lot of time in the South and had this language as their vocabulary, and it helped me to pick it up and include it in my language, and I'd never done that before, and I love it. I love y'all. Use y'all. It's okay. It's okay even if you've always lived quite far north like I have, moving from Chicago to Portland, the only places I've ever lived. It's okay to adapt and use y'all. It's a great word. So, number four, fourth rule is learn. Keep learning and do it on your own, and don't make your trans friends teach you everything. If you hear a word and you're not sure what it means, or you see it in a post on Twitter or something, go Google it. If you are new to the term non-binary, go Google it. If you see FTM and you're like, what does that mean? Google it. Go look it up. There's very good resources to learn these things so that you don't have to comment on a trans person's post and be like, what? What are you talking about? But that doesn't mean you can never ask a trans person. I actually really love answering these questions because maybe it's because I'm autistic. Maybe it's because I desperately want to connect with people. So I don't usually mind, but not everybody feels that way. And there's so much basic stuff that everyone should know in these days and age. If you don't know what all of these letters mean, LGBTQIA, and then the number 2, if you don't know what those means, go Google them right now. You should know what every single one of those means, and why there's a plus at the end. And yeah, that's stuff that everybody should just know, and it sucks that our schools don't teach us these things, but you can learn on your own. So learn and keep learning, because this stuff changes and evolves fast. New terms are being invented on the regular, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to keep learning. And I have a lot of older friends who are good allies who are not great allies because they haven't kept learning, because they think, oh, I learned this all 20 years ago, and stuff has changed so fast. Some of them have no idea that asexuals exist, or who they are, or what that means. Some of them, I tell them, oh, I identify as demi, and they're like, what does that mean? So these are things that you need to be keeping up on and learning if you're going to be a great ally. So those are the 4 big ones. And to be really mindful of when you're leaning on your trans friends for knowledge, and when you can go find it on your own, because there's a lot of times you can go find it on your own. And so that's where I'm kind of at, and those are my big guidelines. And for me, the number one most important thing for you to be a good ally to me is to get my name and my pronouns correct all the time, 100% of the time. Whether you're speaking to me, whether I can hear you, whether you're in a different house talking about me to your friend or partner, get that right all the time, and correct yourself in the moment if you catch yourself being wrong. If you catch yourself being wrong, go, she, oh, I mean they. That's it, and then just move on. That means so much more to me than you internally going, and then not fixing it or not noticing at all. That's hard, is when people get that wrong. It really is. It's hard for me, and I just don't have the confidence to say, "Hey, actually, it's they. Hey, actually, it's AJ." I wish I did. I'm working on it. I'm practicing. Just like the same way that you need to practice using correct pronouns and names for people. So practice it at home. Um, I had to practice it. I'm not perfect at it. I have messed up people's pronouns. The first person I met that I used they, them pronouns for, I messed it up for months, kept screwing it up. And I feel bad about it, but that's not their fault. That's my fault. And so I practiced it. I practiced it on my own. Throughout the day, I would challenge myself, like, today I'm going to use they, them pronouns for 2 hours straight. I'm not going to say he or she. Now I know that's not a perfect way to do it, but it's a good exercise for you to try and learn pronouns you're not used to, because there's other pronouns too, as outside of he, she, and they. There are other ones, and someday you might have a friend who uses them and you might have to learn them. So the only way to do that is to practice. So be a good ally and practice. And I don't have a really good way to wrap this up, except to say that tomorrow I'm 7 months on T. And I think my next video is going to be 100% like a check-in. How are things going on testosterone? Things like that. Because this is 20 minutes long of me rambling, 21 and a half minutes now. And it's time to say thanks for watching and peace out and be a good ally and strive to be the ally that I can say I vouch for 100% to another trans person. Because those people are really rare and we need so many more of them. And you can do it. I really believe that you can do it. So peace out. Be a good ally.